I want to pop my clogs at the end of my life, knowing that I've squeezed most of the juice out of life, and feel fulfilled and rewarded and satisfied that I've put the effort in. Because I know so well that you get out of life what you put in.
Hello, everyone, and this is the Space Cafe podcast, and I'm Markus. So this is the story of John McFall, super athlete, a person who at the age of 19 lost his lower leg, and a person who decided to become an astronaut. How cool is that? My world is getting smaller and smaller listening to something like this and trying to wrap my head around such a career. Let's backtrack a little. John McFall took part in a pretty fascinating experiment the European Space Agency conducted, actually as the only space agency in the world who has ever attempted to do something like this. So ESA has been conducting an experiment that's all about finding out as to how physical disabilities change or contribute or harm or benefit space exploration. John McFall, this fascinating guy, is at the center of the attention of all of this. He was put through the ringer of astronaut training. And this is the story. I invited him to the show. Of course, I wouldn't want to talk to John McFall about such an interesting story, such an interesting journey, to find out as to how the experiment went. And by the way, all in all, I find the overall idea of such a project very, very inspiring, because it's not just about John being able to go into space at some point. It's all about opening up space to everyone, because maybe we should ask a pretty uncomfortable question we haven't asked so far, and that question is, in zero or almost zero gravity, who needs a leg? I know this sounds kind of inappropriate, but well, it's an obvious question. Do we really need legs in space when we're floating around? So, welcome, John McFall, to the Space Cafe podcast. Thank you so much, John, for taking the time. This is going to be fun. Let's go. I was wondering if you're at a hospital. I'm wondering, during a coffee break, and where you meet your colleagues, how does that feel like to you? I mean, like, are you like the weirdo surgeon who gets medals at Paralympic events and then wants to become an astronaut? How is a typical coffee break for you?
I think because if I don't know people that I'm on a coffee break with, I tend to keep myself to myself, right? Okay. I just kind of sit quietly, have my coffee and go about my business. Yeah, sometimes I'm with colleagues who know me and they know my backstory and stuff. And we talk about some funny stuff. But I have to say, within the world of medicine, a lot of medics are achievers, right? They've also achieved a huge amount of great stuff in their lives. But yeah, my situation is fairly unique. My background, firstly being an amputee as well, and being a surgeon, and having that background in sport was probably already enough to talk about it in a coffee break.
And you're a father, so I mean, like, your 24 hours are pretty much taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly I remember those days, a few years back when my kids were very young. They're a bit older now. They're 12, 11 and 8 now. But when they're in those small years, and I'm going through my training years as a surgeon as well, which are incredibly demanding, both academically and also from a time point of view. They were some tough days, very much a blur. You're just lurching from one day to the next, just trying to keep the plate spinning.
Wow. But it seems like you're always craving for something to engage with, to do. So you're not like a happy idler.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're very right, very observant. I think I probably make life difficult for myself, but I probably do that intentionally because, I want to pop my clogs at the end of my life, knowing that I've squeezed most of the juice out of life, and feel fulfilled and rewarded and satisfied that I've put the effort in, because I know. I know so well that you get out of life what you put in, and I like that. I like that feeling. It's just I find it very rewarding. I don't mind working hard.
Completely understand. I love that. Love that, because what you get back is so much more powerful. So I completely understand. John, let's get like this out of the way. You lost a leg during a motorcycle accident, or because of a motorcycle accident at age 19, right? That was.
Yeah.
And then you became a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Then you became a professional surgeon. Then you decided to become an astronaut. So all this in a nutshell. I'm just wondering, why is ESA making such a big thing out of somebody without a lower limb wanting to become an astronaut? Meaning, who needs a leg in space?
I think what ESA are doing is really related to, I think, what I think are quite core values to us as Europeans, really, and that is that if people are good enough, everyone should have equal opportunity to do the same as others. And I think ESA recognize that talented people come from such a wide variety of backgrounds and different parts of society that, why should a physical disability preclude you from doing the job as an astronaut if you are, cognitively competent, psychologically competent, healthy, and fit? Why should that stand in the way? Should it stand in the way because that's just the way it's always been? And I think when I found out about this, I thought actually what ESA were doing was quite bold and brave to ask this question. And you might think, it's a bit tokenistic. It's just all this about diversity and equality and inclusivity. But actually, break it down. What are we doing? We are demonstrating that it doesn't matter where you come from. Let's challenge the preconceptions and the norms. Change the narrative about what we expect, or the professional roles in which we expect to see people with disabilities working. And I think that is quite a prominent, I would say, quite a prominent attitude in Europe.
Absolutely. So maybe the question is not to be, maybe I'm exaggerating now, but it shouldn't be about inclusivity. It should be about realizing that perhaps we are missing something as a society, that we're excluding potential that should not be excluded. Because again, why would we need a lower limb in space, in zero gravity, with a perfectly capable mind and a capable body attached to it? So maybe our mindsets need to be refocused. So it seems like almost that place that is most difficult to get to is the most inviting one for all walks of life, for all limbs or missing limbs or whatnot, because it's open for a restart of that discussion. I don't know. Does that make sense?
You mean the microgravity environment, the space environment?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so many people have said that everybody who goes and lives and works in microgravity is disabled by their environment. Humans are not designed to live and work in microgravity. So there is adaptation on every level for every individual, whether you're missing limbs or not. And I think what we've been able to do is we've learned so much about human space exploration and human spaceflight over the last 25 years, is that we're in a place where we're comfortable to say, well, listen, there are a broader range of people who have the requisite skills and who will add value to our work and our ambitions, who may happen to have a disability, but actually that disability doesn't matter. And similar to, I guess, the direction that society is taking a little bit, that certainly in the UK, disability is very widely, how would I describe it? I think in the UK, disability is very widely accepted. You know, there has been a huge amount of publicity and a real socio-political shift, you know, whether it's off the back of the Paralympic Games back in 2012 and the preceding Paralympic Games. But actually this move towards saying, well, yeah, it's just another person. It's just another person who's doing a job. It doesn't matter whether they're using a wheelchair, whether they're an amputee. It doesn't matter whether they're female. It doesn't matter whether they're a person of color. It doesn't matter whether they're gay. It's like, it's kind of like bringing everyone together, right? We're moving more towards unity. And this is a step towards that, and a constructive one, I think.
Beautiful. Let's go, John, let's go right into the fact of the matter. Earlier this year, you underwent quite a bit of an adventure during the winter training in the Pyrenees. Tell us about that. How was that?
I'm a happy man when I'm cold and in the mountains. It's my happy place. I mean, winter survival training is part of ESA's astronaut basic training, and it was important for us as part of our initiative here at the European Space Agency, as part of the FLY initiative, to be able to demonstrate that me as an amputee wearing a prosthesis could undertake the same training as my counterparts. And I had absolutely no problem doing that. And it was great. We went to the Spanish Pyrenees, as you said, and had some good snow, had some decent cold weather, slept out under the stars in our snow graves. And it was great. And for me, there are few better places to be than in the mountains. So that's both in the summer and in the winter. And to be able to go hiking in the snow with snowshoes and sleeping out in snow holes overnight, it's great. I loved it.
So you were one in a party of other astronaut candidates with all limbs, and you with a lacking limb. Is that right? So this was no group reduced to people lacking limbs.
No, and there's no special dispensation. You know, I didn't ask. I've got no reason to ask for any changes to the program, because you know what's been quite important what is quite important to stress in what we're doing here is that we are not changing the requirements for being an astronaut. We are demonstrating that someone with a physical disability can still meet the requirements, still achieve the same things, despite the fact they have a limb missing. And I think that's also quite important in itself. We're not diluting the requirements to be an astronaut. And so, I have done all the same training as all of my other astronaut counterparts.
Tell us about that training. What is most memorable? And maybe first of all, why are such trainings important in the first place? If you are on your career ladder towards becoming an astronaut?
Yeah, training serves several functions, really, and it very much depends on what stage of your astronaut career you're at. So when I have starting here at ESA, the first thing we do is basic training. And basic training is designed to bring a cohort of astronauts up to the same level. And it's a recognized qualification. And it's bringing people up to the same level physically. So if you think about all the operational sorts of things that we've done, so the winter survival training, the sea survival training, the centrifuge training, the hyperbaric chamber stuff, all these sorts of things. So sort of more the kind of operational type things. We all have exposure to that. And then there is the classroom-based stuff. There's the academic side of things. And the idea is we all come from different backgrounds. I come from a medical background. Other people are scientists, astronomers, pilots, but actually we all need to know about everything from aerodynamics to orbital mechanics to climatology, the way that microgravity affects the body's physiological systems, all sorts of stuff like that. So that's very much your basic training. And, I love the operational side of that. I love the going out and doing. Nobody likes sitting in a classroom with death by PowerPoint. But it's kind of an essential part. So I always used to love the operational side of things, getting out and about. But actually, when I look back as well, one of the reasons I ended up as a doctor and one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue this was I love learning. I'm so interested in the way that stuff works. And that is totally true for all the many, many classes that we had in, environmental sciences and geology and everything. It's like, wow, this is a crash course in pretty much every scientific discipline related to our solar system and space travel. And it was
what a privilege.
It was great. Yeah. I was like a kid in a sweet shop. It's just learning so much. Just this sponge, which is very much me. I'm an absolute sponge when it comes to knowledge.
What were those most memorable events or memories you're taking away from that winter training?
My most memorable, I think the most memorable moments from winter survival training were the very early morning starts out in the snow, still dark, sometimes snowing, the peacefulness, the quiet of the mountains, and the camaraderie as well. The fact that we were all there together, we were all part of a team, trying to achieve a common goal, which was to, look after ourselves, undertake tasks as a team, complete the tasks. It was good. It was a great week in the mountains.
Fantastic. And you were being observed by a team of, medical experts and science folks and whatnot. And they would it's like, those container shows, the Big Brother shows, something like this, right? They were watching you and then deducing who gets to the next stage or who needs to leave the
No, thankfully there was no reality show aspect to it, but we were observed by our instructors, but this was mainly actually for the leadership roles and where we were assigned sort of command tasks. So it's like, right, this is your job. You have to get from A to B. This has happened and that has happened. These are your resources. How are you going to deal with it? So-and-so is your leader. So-and-so is the deputy. Right, go and do the task. And that's quite interesting. And you really bond, right, as a team, as a group when you do that sort of stuff. And there is no competition there, which is what I love about it. There's no competition between us when it comes to that sort of stuff. So, it's good fun.
Fantastic. What do you think is your superpower out there? Would you be the commander, or would you be, I don't know. Who would you be?
Yeah, good question. Do you know, I remember I got asked during the interview process. So we had to fill out lots of questionnaires during the selection process, right? And some of those questions were about leadership and stuff, and what kind of leader are you? And I think I answered in there that I'm not a natural leader. And this came up in the interview. We're talking about my role when I'm working in an operating theatre. What do you do as part of a team in an operating theatre, and XYZ? And what do you do in stressful situations when you're on call and as a surgeon in a hospital? And they said to me, "But you said you're not a leader." And I was like, I think by that I mean, rarely would I volunteer myself for a leadership role. I think what tends to happen is a situation arises and organically somehow I end up in that position, not because I want to be in that position or that I have ambition to be in that position. It's just the way that the situation's evolved. And maybe that's just my approach to problem solving. It's a bit of a practical, pragmatic, logical way to approach things with, I view myself as a pretty good communicator with people and reading people and that sort of stuff. So, and maybe that's one of my strengths.
Tell us more about trying to become an astronaut. You're being put through multiple ringers, I guess, and how long does it take, and how does it start? And once you're through with it, what makes you, or where have you improved, and what makes you then more apt to doing what you're expected to do as an astronaut than before? What does a typical training look like?
Okay, so you're not talking about the selection process itself. Actually, once you've been selected and what you do. Yeah. Well, I think because you are selected, there is an amount of assumed competency there, right? Your ability to do many things. I think do things like managing high workload, managing your emotions, decision making, all sorts of stuff like that. Really, the training that you get when you start is designed to give you a really broad understanding of what you might be exposed to in your role as an astronaut. And that is truly multifaceted, right? It's truly multifaceted. And you really have to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife as an astronaut, because you have to do so many things, whether it's, operational based stuff where you have to do your tasks and it's okay, right, you need to learn about this and you need to execute these procedures. You need to do bam, 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 all this. Or is it going and inspiring school kids in a school, for example? Or is it being able to live in hostile environments, in hostile conditions? Or is it actually solving complex social situations with communication skills and leadership and that sort of stuff? So there are so many skills that you have to have. And also the science, understanding the scientific experiments to a degree that you're involved in, and also thinking about what science can we do to really move certain fields forward. What do I know? What can I bring from my side of things to help benefit humans in the future, both on Earth and in human spaceflight? So there's so much going on.
Great. So I'm just wondering if we're putting ourselves now into being in space. I guess up there it's not at all about any physical ability anymore, because you're in not in zero gravity, but in reduced gravity, microgravity. That is this a good place to rethink what excellence looks like? Because I don't know, you may have watched For All Mankind, the series.
Some of it, yeah, I've seen some of it.
Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah, I haven't watched all of it, but it's really interesting.
I mean, like how those guys were portrayed. I mean, like, of course, it's fiction, but I assume the portrayal of the heroes from the Apollo days as super athletes was pretty much in close to reality. So I'm just thinking, do we need to rethink all this and rethink what excellence looks like? Because the muscular, six-packed, ripped body is not really necessary out there, I guess.
I think you have to consider that in the context of the evolution of the human space exploration programs, right? What are the requirements of an astronaut? And they have varied throughout the history of human spaceflight. And I think when you're looking at certainly the lunar stuff and what technology and what equipment, astronauts had available to them back then, you did have to be very physically capable, because
as opposed to the Dragon capsule, where it's like almost like going on a Starliner.
Well, some of the forces are still the same. It's more actually what you have to do at the other end. So actually on the moon, because if you think back in the early spaceflight days, the actual duration of time that people spent in space was very, very short. All the testing leading up to Apollo 11, for example, those flights were of very much short duration, what we would now consider short duration. And they never left the spacecraft, right? They never left their spacecraft. So they didn't have to go and walk on the moon and do those physical demanding activities. But actually those guys who landed on the moon and walked on the moon, and the work that they did, they had to shift some serious weight around on the moon. It was pretty physical, although, even with the lunar gravity, you had 120 kilo, 130 kilo objects that needed moving around by hand and stuff. So that's pretty impressive when you think about it. Now, the demands of living and working on the space station are very, very different. And we moved from this era of sort of lunar space exploration to low Earth orbit, prolonged low Earth orbit exploration post the Apollo era. And even in those early days, with the space shuttle era, when the space station was being built, it was still very physically demanding, because it's really hard doing EVAs, so doing spacewalks, doing extravehicular activity is very, very demanding on the body.
Why is that? Why is that?
A big part of it is because the suit is pressurized. So you're in a big, cumbersome suit that is pressurized. So every movement is against the resistance in the material that the increased pressure inside the suit is making, and it makes every movement more exaggerated and harder. Especially gripping stuff and moving you have to move yourself around using your arms. So it's quite a demanding environment, especially, and those who have, anyone who's done the training in the neutral buoyancy laboratory in Houston will tell you that it's physically really, really tough work. You're in there 6-7 hours at a time in this suit doing all the, every movement is harder than it is when you're not in the suit. So still physically demanding. But that is only a very small proportion of your time allocation. Now, in the current human spaceflight program that we have, which is living and working on the space station. So the physical requirements of living and working in space now are slightly less. But the main reason we exercise now in space is so we don't lose our health. We maintain our bone density, our muscle mass, our cardiovascular health. And that's a hugely important part of it. But going back to, I think, what you were originally asking was, I still think human space exploration is going to be quite a physical endeavor. And especially when we go back to the moon again, it will be a physical endeavor. So yes, living in microgravity I guess a lot of the videos that people see of astronauts floating around inside the International Space Station, it looks like they don't need much strength or, the use of their limbs. It's true, but you cannot maintain that long term. You do have to stay fit and healthy. You do have to stay strong. And that's important, especially, if you're talking about long phasing, long transition periods going from the Earth to Mars, for example. If you don't stay physically fit by the time you get to Mars, a third of Earth's gravity, are you going to be able to be strong enough to get out of the rocket the other side and do the jobs you're going to need to do on the surface of Mars, those sorts of things. So I think it's still physical. And I think what we are demonstrating is that people with disabilities can still do the physical jobs.
When you were mentioning astronauts floating through, or the images floating through the space station, you're the first person now I can really ask if something I heard at some point is true. I heard in zero gravity, the easiest way if you want to lock someone up is to put him in the middle of a room. It's because will never be able to get anywhere in that room. Is that right, or is this an internet myth?
No, it's theoretically true, and I think this was one of the potential risks of the earlier stations, the earlier low Earth orbit stations, where one of the original ones was actually the former booster of the Saturn V rocket that was turned into Skylab, was turned into a station, and actually you could potentially get stranded in the middle. Because if you are in true microgravity, it is potential, but in reality, you're probably not staying still long enough to actually stop there. I mean, in the International Space Station, everything is reachable. You can reach anything, is an arm's length away. Pretty much the overhead or the deck or whatever is always an arm's length away. But it's theoretically possible.
So if someone wanted to build a prison in space, they would exactly know how to do it. They wouldn't even need walls. That's a pretty cheap concept. Okay, this is
nice idea. Interesting concept. Interesting idea.
How does it feel for you, John, to be in the spotlight of all this? In the spotlight of guinea pig is the wrong word, but you're in the spotlight of an experiment, a large experiment, that everything seems like you're on the right track and you are helping reshape how we do things in space and maybe also on Earth. How does that feel? Does that put pressure on you?
Try not to think about it. Try not to think about it. I don't think so. I think first and foremost, I'm hugely proud and humbled to be part of this initiative, right? And I am not the only person in this initiative. There is a team of people working and have done a huge amount of work to try and make this happen. I guess sometimes I feel a little bit exposed in the fact that I am just one individual, and at the moment, the work that we have done has been based around me. Some of the lessons we've learned are transferable to other disabilities as well, similar lower limb disabilities. But ESA is the only space agency in the world who are doing this. I am the only person, as far as I know, in the world who is in this position. And I guess I only feel vulnerable because I don't want to let people down. I don't want, for whatever reason, if there was, touch wood, it won't happen, but for whatever reason, there was a reason why I couldn't fly, then, I would be mortified to have let so many people down. That's probably what I catch myself thinking the most, but yeah.
Interesting. But you're a professional. You know how to, especially as a former professional athlete, you know how to deal with stress, and you know how to deal with being in the spotlight. So I think that was a nice precursor for what you're doing right now. So it's all building up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a super privileged position, I think.
Yeah.
I'm a lucky guy.
Yeah. John, most space tech was made with one body type in mind. Maybe even a male body type in mind. Then at some point we started opening up toward female astronauts and personnel. And now I think this could now become the next stage of evolution. What happens, do you think, when we start designing from scratch in space? I think I could imagine from my lay perspective that things could look drastically different if we start designing. I'm hesitant to use that word inclusive, but you know what I mean. Start designing for everyone.
Adaptive. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right. And historically, the problem has been we are fitting humans to the hardware that the engineers have designed, right? And it will not change until we start from scratch, as you say, until we start considering different abilities at the design phase. And what I really hope is that what we're doing here at ESA is creating a foundation and a legacy to allow us to do that in a more informed way. You know, what I'm doing is so small in the grand scheme of things, but it's a stepping stone. It's a very, very small stepping stone that will, although maybe small, will be quite powerful at opening the door to being able to have discussions about other disabilities, and then looking at how we can integrate adaptive systems at the design phase for different types of disabilities, different types of people. But yeah, you're right. Until you start designing things in from scratch, things will not be accessible by to as many people.
Do you know if other agencies are watching? Like, is NASA watching your progress and what ESA does?
Absolutely. And we, you know, in order to achieve what we've achieved, we had to work quite closely with NASA because, you know, we would be using the NASA segment of the space station, their launch systems, their spacecraft, all that sort of stuff. So we've worked closely with them, and yeah, they are very envious of what we are doing, and I have to say, hugely supportive of what we're doing. And I think there are a lot of people out there wishing that not just NASA, but a number of other people and other space agencies wishing that they had done this first. So
why haven't they?
Who knows? Who knows? I think there are certain constraints from an employment law perspective in different parts of the world. Maybe it's different attitudes to disability in different parts of the world. Who knows? You know, I think just here in Europe, we're ripe. You know, it's right for us at this time. It's just the right time for us to consider being able to do this. And, you know, we are proving ourselves more and more as an agency and as a continent how strong we are in the space sector. You know, we have delivered time after time on the projects that we delivered, you know, with our international partners, and we're developing a reputation for that, for being good at what we do. And that coupled with, I think, our sociological outlook in Europe compared to other parts of the world, all that coming together, I think, has just created the conditions for this particular opportunity.
When is your flight scheduled?
The $64 million question, yeah. there is no flight scheduled for me just yet. And this is what I hope we will learn more about in the coming months and years. And we will see what happens. It's out of my hands. This decision is at a political level. And so we will see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months.
How is that decision made? You said it's a political decision. So I guess it's all about which country gets it and which country doesn't get it. And then in those countries, there are multiple options maybe. So how does that usually work?
Yeah, it's a pretty complex process. And what you also have to consider is it's not just the member states within the European Space Agency having to have conversations about who will fly and when and what that will ultimately cost. But it's also, are there seats in rockets for astronauts to sit in? Where are those flights going to come from? At the moment, Europe has, just over an 8% stake in the International Space Station. And that means that there are limited opportunities for flights for European astronauts related to that just over 8% stake. So it's a big machine, and it's not a straightforward decision-making process. There's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Mm. Did you watch the latest Starflight launch last weekend?
I didn't actually know. No, I didn't watch the latest Starship one.
Yeah.
What's the gossip? Tell me.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, for the first time, it didn't blow up. And all the engines, all the boosters did work. So it was a pretty successful launch attempt. I think it was the last one before the next and even bigger version of Starship. But I'm just wondering, because you're the closest to being affected by vehicles that bring people upward. What do you make of Starship as opposed to other vehicles bringing us into orbit, the space station, maybe in a couple of years to the moon? But Starship is a different beast, with a different goal. So what do you make of that?
I think Starship is a phenomenal piece of engineering, and I've always been fascinated and amazed by SpaceX's ability to iterate, to spend money on building something, stick it up in the air, see what happens to it, get a whole bunch of data from it, process it, learn from it, and go again. I think that's what's really fantastic. And to be honest with you, this is what it's this attitude and approach to getting into space that the space industry needs, and having that flexibility. This is something that's very, very difficult to do in Europe, certainly with this, with the member state structure that we have, and actually deciding on how to move forward. It's very, very difficult.
And also because you're reporting to taxpayers, and it gets really tricky if you blow up a Starship after Starship or Ariane or whatever, and you need to answer to taxpayers' questions. Starship doesn't really need to care about something like this because the money comes mostly from SpaceX and from someone else.
Absolutely, but that's partly to do with the model that the agency has, right? And we should be devolving responsibility to industry more and more to make those decisions. So the cost doesn't then lie with the taxpayer; it lies with industry to say, well, how best are we going to achieve the goals that ESA want us to achieve? Well, that's our responsibility. We have the contract with them, which is X, which is the taxpayer's money, which is guaranteed, and this is how we're going to achieve it. So you want to devolve some of that responsibility to the private sector, so that the taxpayer doesn't harbor the risk.
Exactly. I think we have a very good example with ESA, with the Ariane program. Just imagine, and we all know that the latest iteration of Ariane took a while to get space ready. For an obvious reason, because if Ariane blows up, taxpayers will, or member states will very quickly question ESA altogether. And this is the risk ESA runs, and this is why they need to make sure everything is super safe. Same holds true for NASA, and this is what's holding us back, I think. So this is not ESA's fault, of course. This is a fault of a structure, and that hinders technological evolution and innovation.
Yeah, and I think if you look back to the Apollo eras, it was an obscene amount of GDP that was going into the program, and they had the ability to move quickly and iterate because they threw money at the problem. And you would never, like nowadays, you'd never imagine that sort of percentage of GDP going into space exploration. So, yeah, I think if you had billions and billions and billions to throw at the problem, you could do it. And in this intergovernmental organization that we have, we don't have that capacity, that capability.
Mm. I got a fun question for you. Would you rather, John, float untethered for 30 seconds or eat astronaut rations for a month?
Oh, I'd float untethered for 30 seconds.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you actually, do you get astronaut food on Earth to get used to it? How does it taste?
Yeah.
Get your stomach used to it?
This is not something I am very familiar with because I'm not been assigned to a mission and at that stage of training at all. But people I have spoken to who've been through that sort of thing, you have to learn about what food you will take and why you take certain types of food, what the nutritional requirements are that are required for space are. But yeah, it's slightly different to being on Earth. Things like different salt contents, different amounts of fiber, and that sort of stuff.
But we're both runners, so is it gel-like food on the space station, or what is it?
It's a mixture. It's a mixture. There are a whole range of things. So there are freeze-dried and dehydrated foods. There are foods that are wet that just need warming up. Yeah, those sorts of things. So it is a bit of a mixture.
Okay. John, when a kid with a disability sees you in that flight suit, hopefully sooner than later, what do you hope they feel?
Empowered. I hope they feel empowered if they see that. And they see a happy future for themselves where they are a valued member of society, getting out there, grabbing life by the short and curlies and going and living it is how I hope they feel.
Beautiful. Would you rather go to Mars or to the moon if the call came?
To the moon.
Because it's, if you don't like it, you can go back on the next bus.
It's a bit quicker to get back from the moon. Yeah.
Why not Mars?
I am purely saying that with our existing knowledge, right? In the context of our existing knowledge, we don't know what it's like to operate on the surface of Mars. We have a track record of being on the moon. It seems more attainable and achievable. And yeah, I think maybe it's I'm thinking about my family too much. If it was just me, if it was just me and I wasn't attached to anyone and knew that nobody cared about me, and I didn't care about anyone else, then maybe I'd consider going to Mars and being part of that pioneering voyage for sure. But my life is not like that.
I'm very privileged with you as a medical doctor in the room right now. So let me ask you this. I'm told that 50%, if we were to go to Mars in the next 5 to 7 years, I'm told that 50% of the astronauts will not come back because they won't survive it because of the radiation problem still being unsolved. Is this something that concerns you also as a medical doctor?
I think the single most significant barrier to humans having a sustained presence in deep space is going to be radiation. And until we learn how to manage the risks of prolonged exposure to radiation in space, it's going to make deep space exploration incredibly difficult. We're just not there yet. But yeah, it's really interesting. As part of our training, we've had to learn an awful lot about the effects of radiation. We do radiation biology, and it's a very interesting topic. There are minimal risks in the current space exploration, the current space program. So living and working on the space station, the risks of the different radiation environments are negligible. But there's some really interesting stuff going on related to that, because you've got the cosmic radiation, you've got the galactic cosmic rays, which is one side of things, and then you've got the sun's radiation, which is the other thing. So there's these two major components that are the problem. When we have these big solar flares, for example, you get less galactic cosmic rays, or the effects of galactic cosmic rays are less because you have more solar particle events, and then you have more problems with the radiation from the sun, and vice versa. But an interesting mission that's coming up, it's due to launch, I think, in 2031. It's an ESA mission. It's called Vigil, which is going to be a satellite that is basically going to be following the Earth around the sun at a particular point and taking observations of the sun, so basically solar weather, and will act as an early warning system for Earth and our satellite constellations around Earth and stuff as well. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, radiation is a hugely difficult phenomenon to manage in space exploration.
How can I imagine radiation or the effect of radiation on the human body? How can I imagine that to be like? Is this like the closest we can get to it on Earth is a sunburn, I guess? Is that right?
No, it's not quite right. Yeah, so we experience sunburn because of the sun's ionizing radiation, but actually sunburn is probably the only thing that we see. It's more what we don't see that is the problem. And although you see your skin is a little bit red or whatever, you've got to think of what is a lot deeper. All of those energetic particles coming from the sun are passing straight through your body. And as they pass straight through your body, they are passing straight through cells. These particles are tiny, right? They're tiny, subatomic sort of level, and they're passing through your cells and smashing into DNA and doing colossal amounts of damage to whatever is in their path. And those are the effects of radiation. So there are acute effects of radiation and there are long-term effects of radiation. So you can get very sick from radiation exposure acutely if the dose of radiation is high enough. And that has to be quite high doses. And it's what we call acute radiation sickness. And essentially what happens is that radiation, that ionizing radiation, damages so many cells in your body. So it smashes up the DNA. Those cells are no longer able to repair themselves, so they die. And all parts of your body suffer, and that can be a problem. So that's acute radiation sickness. Then there's the chronic long-term effects of radiation exposure, and that is micro damage, if you like. So these energetic particles damaging certain genes within DNA in our cells. And it may be genes that are responsible for cell repair or DNA repair even, and also genes that are responsible for preventing tumors, and those sorts of things. We have genes in our body that are responsible for preventing tumors, and a whole range of other genes to repair DNA. If those are damaged by radiation, then you will get increased incidences of cancer, for example. And those are the problems with long-term sort of chronic radiation. Sorry, that was a bit of a big. I got a bit medical there.
No, it's fantastic. So the problem is not an immediate reaction caused by radiation, that I'm bleeding from my eyes or whatever, as science fiction is telling us all the time from science fiction movies. But it's more like that I'm developing some sort of cancer.
Yeah, that's the chronic side of things. The bleeding from the eyes thing is real as well. That's acute radiation sickness, because and the reason why you would be bleeding from orifices and from your eyes is because the radiation, you've had really been exposed to a high dose of radiation, that a lot of the cells that make up the walls of your blood vessels have been obliterated. Okay. And your blood vessels are no longer able to contain the blood, and you bleed. And so that's what we call acute radiation sickness.
Okay. Great. John, so you said if circumstances were different in many ways, you would be ready to go beyond the moon, maybe even further. So my question to you, and this is a question I keep asking each of my guests, traveling into space is exciting, but at some point gets quite boring because the distances are very vast, and at some point you've had it. So my question to you, what one piece of music would you not want to miss on that playlist you're bringing with you? And what one piece of music is the one that keeps you entertained?
Markus, that's a difficult question. That's like an impossible question.
And I'm not talking about an album. I'm talking about a one piece of music. And by the way, we do have a playlist on Spotify called the Playlist for the Aspiring Space Traveler. And that playlist consists of all the contributions from our guests. So I'm very curious to hear your choice.
Now, and the question is that going to influence my choice? Now you said it could potentially be public. Oh. That's a good question. Do you know, there are a few songs. But I'm only allowed one, right, Markus? Only allowed one.
Yes. And we have all musical styles already. We have classical, we have Iron Maiden, we have Britney Spears, we have ABBA, we have, I don't know, everything.
Do you know what? There is a live version of, and I think it's like 16 minutes long. There's a live version of Status Quo's 4,500 Times. And I think they played it at Milton Keynes in 1979 or something like that. And it's still one of my favorite go-to pick-me-up pieces of music that never fails to get me going.
Wonderful. I'll put that up on the playlist immediately.
It would have to be the long live version though.
Yes.
The truncated one just doesn't quite hit the spot.
Yeah. Now I'm really curious to check it out myself. I haven't heard of it before. Yeah. And my last question to you, John. This is the Space Cafe podcast, a coffee place, if you will, where we sit down and have energizing conversations. And sometimes when you need a little shot of inspiration, of energy, you drink a strong shot of coffee. And now I challenge you to share an espresso for the mind with me, with the audience, a shot of inspiration you feel like that could be energizing for the audience. And it doesn't really matter what kind of topic you want to talk about.
You know what? I think I will tell you about some very simple words that I have kept with me since I had my accident 25 years ago that really resonate with me. And when I find things are getting a bit tough and I have to kind of refocus myself and go, come on, mate, get on with it. Yeah, it's not going your way or whatever. Then I always reflect and use these words or this phrase. And the Christmas after I had my accident, my parents were pretty upset by my new situation. They knew how adventurous I was and how much I loved to explore. And now they worried that with my disability that I wouldn't be able to achieve the things or be fulfilled or get the fulfillment out of life that I had once aspired to get. And they gave me this Christmas present, and it was a giant atlas of the Earth. And I always used to love opening up an atlas and just browsing and going, I'd love to go there and travel from there to there, and which indeed inspire many of my journeys that I've been on. I traveled by train from China back to the UK, for example, things like this. And I opened up this book, and written on the inside were the words, always go the extra mile. Life will reward you. And this is all about, you get out of life what you put in. Sometimes life is hard, but you just got to work at it. And it's not always easy, but if you put the effort in, you will be rewarded.
This is beautiful. I don't want to wreck that moment by adding additional words. So thank you, John, for taking that time with me here on the Space Cafe podcast. This was outstandingly interesting.
It's a pleasure. It's great to catch up with you, Markus. And hopefully our paths will cross again in the future.
Fantastic. This is, again, take it as it is, but this is one of those moments that are really inspiring, that are making my day as a person. And I'm as an excited podcaster. So yeah, take it as it is.
Oh, thank you. I could chat to you all day, Markus.
That was encouraging, wasn't it? Seriously, I mean, the sheer concept that one of the greatest adventures in humanity's lifespan on this planet, to venture out into space, is perhaps becoming the most inclusive one, to welcoming each and every one from every walk of life and physical state. I love that. It's something that we on Earth are still failing to really accomplish, and perhaps we need space. We need that hostile space out there. Make us that leap into more inclusivity. I love it. If you feel like this could be inspiring to someone, consider sharing the episode with that person in your life. And if you want to share something with me or us here at the Space Cafe podcast, send in a message at podcast@SpaceWatch.Global. And other than that, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I speak with you in 2 weeks from now. Thank you and bye-bye.